It is now time for the Summer Showdown of the Overwatch League, and we're entering into week one of it. Friday, we will get to see London with Sparker as finally able to play as they go up against the Paris Eternal. With this new player, I feel like the team is going to have a breath of life and can give them a bit of momentum going into some matches, which is why I think London's going to beat Paris 3-1. But that's not to put down Paris. Paris is definitely not a bad team right now. They showed that they were doing really well during the June Joust, but now with the loss of a hero ban, will they be going back to their ways before in the May Melee? Or will they continue on with their power through like they were in the June Joust? Gladiators and Shock, I feel like it's going to go about the same way as their past matches over in the May Melee, where Gladiators looked unimpressive and pretty disappointing against the Shock, who looked pretty strong as they always do. Winning Saturday, you have London and Shock. Even with Sparker, they're definitely not going to be able to beat the Shock, but I feel like it might be a closer affair to what it would be if Sparker was not able to play. Florida and Toronto. These guys were pretty close to the May Melee, and I feel like that closest is going to come back around as they have a very close fight, but I do think that the Florida Mayhem will pick it out. Just because Toronto's been pretty unimpressive as well in their own right. Kind of been pretty disappointing, even though they have KDG as a coach with Sato and Hisu on the team. Yeah, at least now they're able to play now that they're clear of COVID-19. Vancouver and Boston, this is actually surprisingly a pretty hard one to pick because of Stand 1. The man who threw Boston's opportunity at the June Joust away because he just decides to throw a game. But it's pretty obvious that Boston is going to win this, but it's just a matter of is it going to be a 3-0, 3-1, or will they even go map 5? But Vancouver doesn't like to go map 5, so it's very clear that they're not going to go map 5 there at least. But it could possibly be a 3-0. The Gladiators and the Eternal. This is going to be a pretty much a throwaway pick for me because I'm pretty certain Paris will not be able to keep the momentum from the June Joust because when there were no hero bans, they really fell to the Reinhardt Rush compositions, and I feel like that's going to continue on here. I feel like Ryan Rush is going to re-enter the meta regardless of these Moira buffs or these Reaper buffs. Dallas is definitely going to play that team composition, but I don't see that being played by really anybody else except for whoever Dallas faces in a match. But this match I do feel like might be close. It might even just be one side of the Gladiators. That's the likely side to go to it, but I want to have faith in Paris. I like Paris. Even though they're not the same team they were last year at all, it's still something I would love to see. I would love to see this Paris Eternal team really do well because I was a massive fan of Paris last season, and I would like to continue to kind of see them succeed now that I'm kind of more drawn to a team like Dallas, which was basically Paris last year. Boston and Mayhem, I don't see this being very close, despite the fact that I have Boston winning a map. I don't see them getting much more other than that. Just because they're really disappointing this year, which was kind of sad because they had a lot of momentum, which was kind of, in my opinion, halted once Soon was announced that he couldn't play for the team. Because Soon was kind of going to be their backbone for their high damage. His Tracer and his Sombra and his Ashe would have been able to carry the team, but now all they have is these McCree compositions they can play, which even then, they're not very good at. I'm 37 is not cutting it in the Overwatch League as he was in Contenders, but I feel like Boston does have a bit of potential. And they could definitely take some close fights to teams, but their issue lies in their diversity. They have none. Which is why they're a really poor team this year. Toronto and Titans, pretty clear. Titans is just, they're awful. Dalton, I will always hate on Dalton no matter whatever anyone else wants to say. Oh, but Rolf. Oh, but Fire. Oh, but anybody else on the team, honestly. But Dalton is easily the worst person on that team. And they love to play him for no reason whatsoever. Even though they have a perfectly good hit scan and Linkser on the team, they still choose to play Dalton over Linkser, which is going to lead to their 3-0 defeat to the Defiant. Into the East region now. Saturday, Spark Valiant 3-0. Valiant will probably only ever take that one map on Fusion, and that's it. Pretty clear as to why the team is not good at all. And Spark was coming off a really strong performance in the June Joust. So I see them being able to keep that momentum, even without the hero ban. Going to that now, you have Seoul and Chengdu. This could be a close match. This could be not a close match at all. Both teams seem to be pretty inconsistent. Chengdu taking some heavy defeats, as well as Seoul just kind of doing what Seoul usually does, not really having very impressive performances up until a tournament. But this year it seems to be kind of a bit of just being pretty poor throughout the entire year. So it could go either way, in my opinion. I do have faith in Seoul because I do like the team, as well as Chengdu. I think both teams are really strong right now, and they could definitely pull off a really good match. Last on Saturday will be the Guangzhou Charge and the New York Excelsior. I'm going to give it a 3-1 to the Charge. New York is just an inconsistent team. We saw that during the June Joust. They looked really strong in the knockouts, but then they looked really, really poor in the actual tournament when they went up against Atlanta and the Dragons, I believe. I could be wrong. It's been a week. My mind's pretty rusty there. But regardless, my point would still stand that New York is just, they're pretty much like Seoul, but by a week-to-week basis. They can be good, but they can also be really, really bad. And I see this week being a pretty bad week for them. And then Sunday, you have the Spark versus the Dynasty. I am going to give it to the Dynasty. Spark does have their weak points, and I feel like this is going to be it, because during these banless times, they've never really been able to do that great. While Seoul has actually been able to prove that they are fairly good in these Rhine Rush compositions, like this tournament will probably be dominated by. But I do say that this is going to be a close game. Definitely probably going to be map 5. But it could easily be a 3-1. Or Spark could even win it by a close margin. Now Chengdu in Charge. I am going to give it a 3-0 to the Hunters. Mainly just because they're such a dominant team. I don't really see Charge being able to do much against the Hunters, especially since Charge this year has been pretty lackluster. Not much else to really say about that. Same thing with New York and Valiant. My point still stands from earlier. They're not going to be able to beat or take a map off of really anybody else. If they are going to take it from anyone, it probably would be Nixel. But I am going to give them the benefit of the doubt and go a 3-0 to the New York Excelsior.